Have you ever had a dream, a personal goal that was so big and so gnarly that the second you thought it, you get that knot in your stomach, right? This little voice in your head that says, nope, that goal is too big for you. The idea of speaking that dream out loud in front of your family or your friends or your peers at work literally just makes you kind of cringe. Maybe you have an innovative idea, a way to change something that would revolutionize biotech and biopharmaceuticals, but you think, I don't want to be the guy to rock the boat. You know, maybe you have an idea for a way that Momenta could do something different internally, and you keep thinking, I'm going to tell Craig at that next meeting, but you get that little voice in your head that says, but what if it doesn't work? I don't want to be the gal, right, who's trying to bust the status quo. It's easier to stay where we're at because it's comfortable. I think we've all been in that place. I think we've all felt that no matter where we are in our careers, and I'm no exception. I had a dream since I was 5 years old to become a fighter pilot. But more than that, I thought it would be cool to be an Air Force Thunderbird pilot. You see, I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. Yep, people are from Las Vegas, Nevada. And I think it's clear that plan A for my life did not work out. I am too short and curvy to be a showgirl, so I went with plan B and I became a fighter pilot. Now, what's really cool about Las Vegas, Nevada is there's an Air Force base there called Nellis Air Force Base. Its nickname is home of the fighter pilot. So I used to watch these fighter aircraft fly all the time and imagine myself up there. But what's really cool about Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada, is that it's home of the Thunderbirds. And I remember being a kid with my brown bag lunch in high school and taking it out and sitting on the football field, eating my peanut butter and jelly sandwich and looking up and watching these Thunderbirds fly, thinking someday, wouldn't it be cool to be a Thunderbird? Now here's the thing, it's hard enough to become a fighter pilot in the Air Force. It's even harder to become an Air Force Thunderbird pilot. Just for statistical significance, there's about 12,000 pilots in your active duty American Air Force today. Of those, 3,000 approximately are fighter pilots. And of those, on any given year, only six have an opportunity to fly as a Thunderbird. I mean, it's statistically improbable, of course, that anyone would become a Thunderbird pilot. Now, in 2005, I had been a fighter pilot for, I guess about 7 years at that point. I was considered what you would call mid-career. I was at the height of my game as an F-15E fighter pilot. I had led peers safely in and out of combat. I was a flight lead. I was an instructor pilot, an evaluator pilot, the trainer, if you will. I was a flight commander. I was a mission commander. You name it, I had every single certification and qualification that you could have as a fighter pilot. And in the back of my mind, I still had that idea. Wouldn't it be cool to be a Thunderbird pilot? But then that voice would come in and say, no, that's too hard. It's too big of a goal. It's too gnarly, Nicole. Other people become Thunderbird pilots, not you. And every year the Air Force sends out the exact same email. Every year they're looking for 3 new Thunderbird pilots. It's a 2-year assignment, so 3 pilots are new and 3 pilots are on their 2nd year. Every year the same form email comes out at the exact same time, says the exact same thing. These are the qualifications, here's the application. And even though I had had this dream since I was a kid, and even though I was qualified, every single year I did the exact same thing. Delete, delete, delete. Other people become Thunderbird pilots, Nicole, not you. And in 2005, I told you I found myself mid-career with all these qualifications, looking around going, what's next? I'm always someone that needs to be going after this next goal, and lo and behold, at the exact same time, that same email came out. And I read that email, and something was different that year. 2005, the light bulb came on, and as I read that email, I thought, why not me? Why not me? And I couldn't get the idea out of my head, and I went to bed that night, and at 2:30 in the morning, I woke up my poor husband, and I said, babe, did you see the message came out? I'm qualified to apply. I'm thinking of being a Thunderbird. Do you think I'd be a good Thunderbird pilot? He exhaled, really annoyed that I had woken him up at 2:30 in the morning. And he said, babe, I think you'd be a great Thunderbird pilot. And I remember he playfully picked up the pillow, put it over my face, and he said, now go to bed. You know, but the next morning when I woke up, I had just enough of a nudge just enough support for the person whose opinion meant the most to me, to go into work and to speak the goal out loud. And it was hard. And I had the voice in my head that said, don't do it, and that nauseous feeling in my stomach. And I told my peers and my friends and my colleagues and my supervisors, and I said, I'm applying to be a Thunderbird. And generally speaking, I was met with nothing but support. People were tickled. But then it started. If I had $1 for every time I heard this, you know, Nicole, it's hard to become a Thunderbird pilot. Yeah. You know, Nicole, you probably won't be picked. Yeah. You know, Nicole, they haven't had a woman Thunderbird pilot before. Are you sure you want to do that? Over and over and over. And the more that I heard this, the more the self-doubt grew in my head. The more the voice said, really, Nicole, are you sure you want to do this? There was other people's unconscious bias. There was other people's doubt about what I could or couldn't do. There were the cultural paradigms of the Air Force at that time. I even had someone say to me, you know, Nicole, we just let you women become fighter pilots, and now you want to go and take this too. Wow, right? Wow, by being different, by making other people uncomfortable, I was experiencing all of this, but I stayed focused. And the application is very complex and very gnarly, and I put that application together. A picture of me in uniform, a letter of why I wanted to be a Thunderbird, all of my annual officer performance reports, the equivalent of your annual HR reports, all of my testing and flying check rides. But the single most important thing, the thing that was weighted the most, was a letter of recommendation from the first full bird colonel in your chain of command. Now, if you look at this picture, I am a young captain. A full bird colonel in the Air Force was a big deal. It was intimidating. I am now a retired full bird colonel. We are not a big deal. We're totally a dime a dozen. But at the time, I thought for sure, right, that this was a big deal. And I remember drafting up the letter. All I needed was his John Hancock. So this application goes in, and I walk it down the street to his staff, and I slide it across the desk, and I say, I'm qualified. I'm applying to be a Thunderbird. And the staff member behind the desk looks at me and says, you know, there's a lot of other qualified people and people that are applying. And I said, I know. I just want an opportunity to compete fairly. And he took that application across his desk, and like time slowed down in that moment. And he looked at me and he said, you know, Nicole, it's hard to be a Thunderbird. You know, Nicole, you probably won't be picked. You know, Nicole, they haven't had a woman Thunderbird pilot before. And the colonel only has one number one recommendation he's allowed to give. So we're not sure we want to waste it. We're not sure we want to waste it. I know HR professionals everywhere are shuddering at this story, right? But that actually happened. Now, was that person trying to be mean and awful and burn my dreams? I can assure you that is not true. What was coming out was unconscious bias. What was coming out were the cultural paradigms of the Air Force at that time. What was coming out in a lot of places was jealousy that I had the courage to apply, and these other people maybe didn't. But I'm going to tell you the truth of what happened in that moment. And it surprises people, and it still surprises me, but it's the God's honest truth. When he said that, I was deflated. That voice said, darn it, Nicole, I told you not to do this. You just embarrassed yourself. And I literally reached across the desk. I grabbed it. I stepped back from the desk and I said to him, you're right. I'm so sorry for having bothered you. And I removed my application and I walked out of there feeling embarrassed and ashamed. That's actually what happened. I almost never became an Air Force Thunderbird pilot at all because I almost let everybody else's expectations guide what I was doing. And I removed my application and I walked out thinking, thank God you didn't embarrass yourself, right, by applying. It wouldn't have worked anyways, Nicole. Who were you to think you could be a Thunderbird pilot? Silly, silly woman. And I did what any self-respecting fighter pilot would do at that moment. I walked across the street to the bar and I grabbed a beer. That's right. I'm over there licking my wounds, talking with my hands like fighter pilots do. There I was, trying to stand there with the guys, feeling cool, thinking, thank goodness I didn't embarrass myself. And I'm standing there, and in walks the wing commander. Now, this guy's in charge of the whole base. This is like the CEO walking in. It's a big deal. You put on your best, right? Craig walks in, you stand up. Same thing. This guy's a general. He's 6'6". He's the man's man of a fighter pilot, the poster child. totally macho, everything. And he comes over, and for whatever reason that day, he decides to talk to me, young Captain Malachowski. And I'm sitting there, you know, talking to him, drinking my beer, trying to be cool. I'm looking like way up at him, and, you know, he's looking way down at me. And as we're having this just general conversation, over walks my supervisor. He says, General, did you know that Nicole's applying to be a Thunderbird? Yeah. Oh man, I couldn't believe it, right? Nobody knew what had just transpired 30 minutes earlier across the street. And I'm thinking like, ixnay on the Underbird day, like this is terrible. And I remember the general, he looked down at me, way down at me. And he said, that's great. Nicole, how's your application going? And the truth is, I looked up at him and I said, you know, sir, it's hard to be a Thunderbird. You know, sir, I probably won't get picked. You know, sir, they haven't had a woman before, so I don't want to waste anybody's time. That actually happened. And in that moment, General Mark Matthews gave me the single greatest gift of my personal and professional career. The mantra and the phrase that I say to myself for every single success I have had since then, and the one I offer you today. The next time you get that little voice in your head that says, don't do it, or that knot in your stomach, I want you to remember this. He looked down at me, and I remember he squeezed my shoulder really hard. I think like to get me to shut up, because I was like, blah, 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 all the excuses coming out of my mouth. And he squeezed my shoulder and he looked down at me and he said, Nicole, nobody wants to lead a scripted life. Nobody wants to lead a scripted life. And in that moment, right, the weight of the world, he took off of my shoulders. He told me it was okay to dream big. It was okay to risk failure, that I didn't need to censor my dreams or who I was for anybody else. He freed me of everybody else's expectations and the cultural paradigms at that time. Nobody wants to lead a scripted life. But the most important thing I think we need to remember, and what Mark Matthews was telling us, is not so much to write yourself into the script, but don't you ever write yourself out of the script. And as leaders of teams, don't ever write anybody else or their ideas out of the script either. Thinking about nobody wants to lead a scripted life. You have the mental capacity when self-doubt comes along, when discomfort comes along, to choose to live life unscripted. What's the worst that was going to happen if I didn't get picked? I was going to go back to flying this beautiful F-15E in combat with the friends that I loved. What was the worst that was really going to happen, other than partially maybe a bruised ego? The fact of the matter is that we are all made to blaze our own path. It's very easy to follow paths that are in front of you. But I don't think that that actually is meeting the intent of you bringing your skills to bear. There's always going to be some level of risk required to grow, to achieve new things, and to have different levels of success or elite performance on your teams. And by all means, don't ever censor any part of yourself. And as leaders at Momentum, what are you doing to create a culture where the people who work with you and for you feel like they can bring all of themselves to work every single day? And as leaders, where are you looking for talent and new ideas? No one expected me. I didn't look, talk, act like anybody else had become a Thunderbird pilot before. But General Mark Matthews was willing to find that diamond in the rough. So that is my question to you. Are you looking outside of yourself and your own kind of paradigms in order to find the talent and to really bring out the talent and the diversity that is on your team?